recording in the cloud. And webinar is starting.
Cool, thank you. All right. Florian is here. All right, everybody. Welcome to this meetup/webinar. Very happy to be joined by Lian and Eva tonight. We're going to wait a couple of minutes before we kick off, maybe 2-3 more minutes. We can already see lots of people joining from across the world. Feel free to say hi and give us a little idea where you are coming from. That would be great. There is just a couple of housekeeping rules. You can send questions anytime. We can, I hope we can technically unmute you and then you can speak up. We really want to make this a collaborative effort here to find why Kubernetes won't save you. If you are sending stuff like greetings from India, right, Ryan, greetings from Germany in my case, please make sure that you select QA and to all rather than just panelists, because otherwise no one else will see your question. And it would be great if everyone could see that. So make sure that you select everyone when sending questions. All right, one more minute and then we should get slowly started. Again, Kubernetes won't save you is our topic. Wonderful. Someone told me last week, no one ever sold any more products because of a beautiful CRD operator. I love that quote. Hello from Phoenix, Arizona. Nice to meet you, Brian. Again, panelists and attendees, gold, well done. 10 a.m. local time. Very cool. Brooklyn, nice. Lots of people from the States. And then we have Elvis from Ghana. Amsterdam, 7 p.m. now. Exactly.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you. Okay, very international. That's cool. All right, now I think we should get started. Welcome again to this webinar today on Kubernetes won't save you. We have people from really around the world and two primary debaters, if you want, and that's Lian and Eva from Container Solutions. And the two are going to introduce themselves in just a second. I am Kasper, and I'm just moderating the session a little bit. I'm very, very happy for any questions. Make sure you post them to panelists and attendees. If you have questions, we can unmute you so you can ask them, but we're going to touch that in more detail in just a second. I am the CEO at Humanitech. We are building internal developer platforms to make it easier to make developers self-service things on Kubernetes and lots of other resources. And I'm very, very happy to have the opportunity to be here today. But over to the two of you to introduce yourself, and then we can get started.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for attending. So yes, today we'll be talking about why Kubernetes won't save you or might save you. So first things first, my name is Lian Li. I'm a cloud native engineer, which is kind of a consultancy role, and an engineering manager with Container Solutions. So we are a consultancy focused on mainly cloud native transformation, infrastructure as code, programmable infrastructure, all the nice buzzwords. And I'm joined today by my colleague.
And me. Hi, I'm Eva Lettner, and I'm an engineering manager at Container Solutions. And I've not been there for long, so it's my 3rd month now, but I'm very excited to join Lian today. And what we will do today is there will be a talk that Lian will give as sort of an introduction, and then we would like to start a discussion on a couple of topics. so that we get your input as well, and so that everyone can just learn from each other. Because I think the more voices we hear from that around that topic, the better it is for all of us. So I have made a little Slido for you. So if you could go to slido.com with the code KUBE for Kubernetes. Hey, very clever. Then you will already see the first question. So there are a couple of interactive questions. I have now started with the first one. And so if you want to, you can play along. Somebody already did. Thank you very much. So the first question is, how has your day been so far? And we're giving a star rating, and somebody's had a really bad day, I think. But most people are fine. So, yay. So the overall score of who is having a good day is around 4.1 out of 5, which is a great score. I like that. I'm going to
Coming down. There's some people with bad days.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm going to give you the second question. I'm turning this off while we are still ahead, okay? Giving you the second question. So the second question, what we want to know is, what is your role in your company? So I've chosen some roles that I thought might be yours. So let's see who has what role in all of this. So we have a lot of software engineers here, a lot of other. So I'm very sorry for not coming up with your job title, but it's cool that you're here. We have a couple of engineering managers.
You can also put your role into the chat if you feel not represented, like
Yes.
Rajiv was the DevOps lead.
DevOps lead, yes. Very good point. Thank you, Lian. Yeah, so loads and loads of software engineers, a couple engineering managers. Thank you very much. And now the last one is a bit of an open question thingy. So we want to know what are you expecting today? What would you like to learn in today's webinar? And for this, you will be able to see the other people's answers. We've given you 50 characters to answer. How to transform culture. Very good. Why will Kubernetes not save you? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Perspective, solutions and challenges. Very, very cool thing. Real world user experience. That's exactly why we're here. We want to talk about your real life experiences. Okay.
Nice.
That's some really, really cool answers. Thank you very much. And yeah, you can see the words that are showing up bigger have been mentioned multiple times. So thank you very much. And yeah, this is it from me now. I'm going to throw the ball to Lian. If you have any questions, please throw them in chat. You can also use the Slido Q&A and also keep the link open, because at the end, we're going to cycle back to Slido and ask some more questions of you. Okay, go ahead, Lian.
Thanks, Eva. So yeah, we're going to go into this talk right now, and I give a longer version of this talk at conferences from time to time, go into more details on individual things. If I feel like this might be useful for the conversation that I hope, or we hope we're going to have later, then I'm going to show you more slides of the presentation, just as resources to add to our conversation. But other than that, this is going to be like a little bit of a shortened version, because I'm seeing a couple of topics that people want to learn that I might have not addressed in this short version of it. You can also ask me for the slides later, and I can send you the full version of the slides. So first, when I introduce myself, I actually make a joke, because I am one of the organizers of Serverless Days, which is conference around serverless ecosystem. And then I make this joke that, oh, you know, Kubernetes And serverless won't either, because I expect people to say, oh, obviously you're trying to sell serverless to me, but it's actually not Kubernetes, not serverless, not any technology, because it's really not about technology. Like all the transformation stuff that we're doing, it's about culture. And specifically, it's about the culture of problem solving, of adapting to change, and building trust and resilience in your organization. So what I want to talk to you about today, and what I hope we will do after this short talk, is that we talk about our real life experiences. And what I'm going to talk about also is based on like anecdotal data. I've been working in tech for over a decade now. So I started as an intern as a software engineer, and then I moved from front end to back end to DevOps, full stack DevOps. Now I'm a consultant. So I think I've seen quite some things in mid-sized and really huge organizations. So hopefully my experience and insights will, sound maybe familiar to you and will help you. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is to take a look at the state of Kubernetes right now. So I would normally do a show of hands. It's kind of not very practical right now, but I'm guessing that most of you probably have heard about Kubernetes, what it is. If you haven't heard of it yet, a very brief explanation is that Kubernetes is a container orchestration platform. So you can run your containers on the platform, and it will be completely, like the lifecycle of the container will be completely managed by Kubernetes. And Kubernetes has become quite popular in the last couple of years because it promises to make infrastructure tasks cheaper and faster, because it has a really nice API that abstracts all the nitty-gritty away from you. But yeah, as I said, this talk is not really about Kubernetes specifically, but Kubernetes is a very, very good stand-in because it is the popular tool of the month right now, or of the year. So this image is taken from a white paper of our CTO, Ian Crosby. And this is in turn taken from Geoffrey A. Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm. And in that book, he takes a look at the technology adoption lifecycle. So his hypothesis is that before tech is adapted to the mainstream market, it needs to cross this thing that he calls the chasm. And this image is now about 2 years old. I argue that we have now already crossed the chasm. Kubernetes has become mainstream, which is both very good and very bad. To illustrate what I mean is that I've taken these couple of headlines from the last, I think, 3 to 4 years maybe, and they have caused some outrage, interest, snickering, sarcastic comments, hot Twitter takes in the DevOps community. And I would encourage you to Google these stories later. I'm also putting, as I said, the slides. I'm going to put them up on Twitter. They're going to be linked also. The point is that these headlines point to the fact that Kubernetes is becoming kind of the de facto industry standard now, which on one hand is pretty good because it's a good tool. But they also point to the fact that people are slowly waking up from this dream that, Kubernetes will just come and magically solve all of your problems. So you actually have to put elbow grease in it. It's just a tool to work with like any other tool. And it's, you have to like learn it, you have to adapt to it. And then at some point, it probably becomes boring. And there's maybe a new thing that is super shiny and interesting. And you want to drop Kubernetes for this new thing. To me, there are two aspects of why transformations, cloud native transformations fail. And basically what I'm saying is that, you're holding it wrong. You're just misunderstanding the problems that you're trying to solve. And to me, there are two aspects to it. There's the attitude towards technology, the attitude towards the products and tools that we build and use, and the attitude towards people, or the attitude towards the concept of work, or what does it mean to create value. The first point that I want to make, I found this really good XKCD. There's always an XKCD. And this one is entitled Automation. So if you look at this image, it's like this idea that you have to spend some time on a task But if you just, write some code, it will cost you more time and effort in the beginning. But then when automation takes over, you will, achieve this point of what is called a moralization or something, where, the work that you put in at the beginning now evens out, and now you have like all this free time to work on other stuff. But then what actually happens is you start writing code, then you have to debug it, redesign it, whatever. You just kind of get totally distracted with this automation task, so much so that you don't even have time for the tasks anymore that you were supposed to actually do. So I think that this is probably something that you might be familiar with. Maybe you know a colleague, maybe you are that way yourself. I know that I've often become victims to this little brother of the sunken cost fallacy. So I have a funny story for that, and this is like a real story. Like, this actually happened. We had a customer that they developed a piece of technology, and this technology, it had AI. It was IoT. We were like building it on Kubernetes with microservices. First, we ran it on GKE. We used Kotlin. Then we migrated our entire front end to TypeScript. It was a really, really fun project. We did a lot of like cool, like for a technologist, that was really cool stuff, cutting edge technology, super fun. But the customer then, they pushed us to deliver for a demo with investors and press. That was quite sudden. They were pretty hands off before, and then suddenly it was like, okay, by end of next month, we have to deliver this. And the use case completely changed, because now they were not interested in high availability and high scalability anymore. They wanted to run it on one physical server. Not a problem. We can run single node Kubernetes clusters, but that server could not be connected to the internet ever. We're never allowed to ever connect the server to the internet. So what happened was they bought a physical server, which they shipped to us via UPS, and we had to install our application on a USB drive. It was still Kubernetes. We used Helm, but we had it on a USB flash drive, and then we shipped the server back to them. So, and that really happened. And this is a huge company, multi-billion-dollar company. In my mind, there's two ways to look at this. We were either working with completely different projects in mind, we were solving completely different problems, or we did the most physical handover of a cloud application that I've ever been part of. By the way, if you read XKCD, you know that there's a hover text usually, and the hover text of this comic cartoon reads, automating comes from the roots auto, meaning self, and mating, meaning screwing. I think this very, very speaks a lot of truth. So that was kind of the illustration of what I mean by we're solving the wrong problem. There's a lot of ways to try and figure out what is the actual problem we're trying to solve here. What is the thing that creates business value for us? That is the thing that you should solve, not how to optimize your delivery strategy. Once you feel you have a good handle on the actual problem that you're actually trying to solve for your customers, then you can go out and try to optimize for other things. And this quote by Tatiana Mack, who's an engineer, who's really involved in inclusivity and accessibility. One of her famous taglines is that a solution is only as good as your framing of the problem. It's when I dabbled in machine learning, that was exactly what I learned, is that you have to understand, you have to be able to describe your problem, or you're only going to get out, if you're going to be successful, it's by accident. So that was part one. The second one is the second attitude was the cloud native mindset, or the attitude towards culture and the value of work. And so again, this is like a shortened version. So the most important thing that I want to highlight here of psychological safety. In these times where we have to work really fast kind of on things, where technology changes quickly and you want to deliver, you want to be first to market, you want to deliver quickly and continuously, there is more need for something like resiliency and psychological safety, because we are encouraged to work in agile cycles where the whole point of it is to fail as fast as you can. And, you know, to some extent also as often as you can. You want to try things out, fail, and then learn from that. But to be able to take that continuous failure without burning out, you need to have a culture that encourages failing and learning from it. And this requires abilities like taking responsibility and you know, being able to handle stress, self-efficacy, which is the belief that you can do things and you can learn those things. So all of these things are super crucial if you're working in a industry that moves very fast, like in IT, especially when you're working with cloud native technologies. So this is an illustration that you can look at that probably, would be pretty self-explanatory, where you have an axis for accountability. This is the x-axis, and you have an axis of psychological safety. And the goal is to have high accountability and high psychological safety, because that is where you're learning. That is where you push yourself, but you don't get anxious because you're safe. But you're not, you still have to, you know, push yourself and like try new things. Otherwise, you'll be only staying in your comfort zone where you're not learning, where you're not growing. So there's a blog post linked to this at the bottom of the slide. It's by our in-house psychologist, Andrea Dobson. We have multiple in-house psychologists because it's super important, you know, in our industry as consultants specifically, to, you know, be able to deal with stress, deal with people, especially like difficult people who feel uncomfortable that you just went in and tried to like change everything up in their lives. So yeah. That is something that's super important, psychological safety. The other thing is collaboration. So now everything is distributed. You know, we're working in the cloud. Now we're even more distributed because we're not allowed to really like hang out with each other anymore. Your microservices are distributed. Everything is kind of decentralized. And that means that you need to put in a lot more effort into streamlining your collaboration. There's this model from Matthew Skelton and Manuel Pace from their book Team Topologies, which I highly recommend. And they take a look at how engineering teams in cloud native organizations work together. And what they've done is they have defined 3 modes of interaction. There's collaboration, which is kind of the classic mode where you're working together for a defined period of time, mostly to discover new things, you know, APIs, practices. It's kind of like a hackathon style, but it takes up the full amount of time for both teams or both collaborators. We have facilitation, where one team helps and mentors another team. So that is similar to collaboration in the sense that during the time, it is also taking up the full time of both teams. But after they're done, usually with the workshop or you know, maybe also hackathon, whatever, then the one team will be able to work on these things in the future by themselves. There's no need for further collaboration because one team has empowered the other. And then finally, there's the mode of X as a service, which is something that Humanitech does, for example. One team provides a platform or something as a service, and the other team consumes it as a service. And the nice thing about that is that now, like the teams can work asynchronously. They don't have to wait on each other. The dependencies are only expressed through APIs. So that will make, ideally, both teams much more efficient in their collaboration. We're already at the end of this short presentation. This is the final thought that I want to end with, which is also from Team Topologies. I kind of, you know, adjusted it a little bit. Don't do a transformation because you want to use Kubernetes. Use Kubernetes because you're doing a transformation. So really understand your problem, that problem that you're trying to solve, the business value that you're trying to create. Understand your organization. How do our teams work together? Are the teams, do they make sense the way that they're split up? What are the real lines of communication? What are the forced lines of communication? Again, I highly recommend to read the book Team Topologies on that. And yeah, so basically at the end of the presentation, I'm leaving people with the thought, Kubernetes alone won't save you, but with the right mindset, Kubernetes might be just what you need to save yourself. So again, this is about you putting the work in there. So obligatory slide telling you that we're hiring again. We're fully remote. If you're interested in what we do or the work that we do, you can check us out on Twitter or LinkedIn or our website. And yeah. Thank you for listening. So we're going to have a little conversation right now where you're free to ask us questions. We're possibly going to ask you a couple of questions. And we just like to hear from you what your experiences are with either Kubernetes or, picking the wrong technology, maybe solving the wrong problem, and see if we can learn from each other. So I am done. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Great, thank you, Lian. So do we already have some questions? As I said in the beginning, you can either write them in the chat here, which is the easiest for all of us to get, or also on Slido if you have it still open. And yeah, we also have a couple of questions for you. So feel free to raise your hand so we can unmute you and hear from you. Don't be shy about it. We all like to get to know you and how you are solving problems. And Rajiv wrote, very well said, it's all about the mindset and the understanding the problem statement. That is very true. We very much agree there. So we have a question for you. What are the audience's experience around building the wrong thing or choosing the wrong tool? Do you have any fun examples like Lian with the USB stick?
I don't think that can be topped. That was like, I remember when that was actually Ian who told me, because he was the project lead, who's now the CTO. We were out having his goodbye party because he was moving to Canada. And then he just got it on his phone and we were just like having tequila shots actually. And he was like, well, you know what we're going to do? They're going to send us, like, ship a server to us. I'm like, no, you're joking. Come on. That's no. But this is the thing with what's interesting about team topology is when I said what are the forced lines of communication. So how does the organigram, and I'm not, this is the German word. I'm not sure if this is the English word too. That's an idea of how teams are structured and who reports to who and who talks to who. But what are the actual lines of communication? Because people will, similarly, when you see that there's in a park, there's always like this path that's like not the official path, but people just take that path and you see the brown road. It's the same way with organizations where people will just find the path of least resistance and they're going to use that. And it doesn't matter if their official reporting line is somewhere else. They're just going to do what works for them. And in that case, it was easier for them to just send us the server by mail, crazily enough, than, going through all the thing with legal to make sure that we can actually connect it to the internet once, maybe. I mean, it is 2021. Well, it was 2018 then. Do we have any white papers on Kubernetes can't save you? We do have a couple of white papers around cultural transformation. I don't know if any of them specifically say, don't use Kubernetes, it won't save you. But we have a lot of, I forgot I have this feature that turns off my microphone when I type. Yeah. So if you go to containersolutions.com, that's container minus solutions. If you don't put the dash in there, you get to a shipping company. So don't do that. So if you go to container-solutions.com, there are some case studies that you can check. And there are also some white papers probably in the resources. Yeah, there's resources and events.
Yeah, we can actually send them to you afterwards. So yeah, and if you just give them to me, I'll send them over. Anthony, you raised your hand. I'll enable that you're able to talk. Now you should be able to talk.
Oh, yeah. Hey, guys. Anthony Evans here, Solutions Architect. I was just you guys asked if we've got any funny stories to raise our hands. I've been working actually with Kubernetes for 4+ years now in AWS and in different contexts. And my previous company, we even had a software as a service offering that was entirely on Kubernetes, conversational AI type thing. And the amount of times that we had to have war rooms because one microservice stopped communicating to another microservice. And you got to think it was conversational AI. So you'd end up with all these random outcomes, from like either the chatbot not being able to respond at all to all of a sudden responding in Mandarin or in French when it should have been in English, because one microservice got crisscrossed with another. And so I know it's not that hysterical, but I think one of the biggest challenges you do find these days is that in Kubernetes and OpenShift and any of these containerized type approaches, is that you just have this layer of complexity with CI/CD and all that kind of stuff, where, you know, people inadvertently make changes like they're supposed to do, that they want to do, but they inexplicably have ramifications that you don't usually get when you're doing a more traditional software deployment type approach. So I guess if I can have a question for you guys, do you guys have like a big success story where you've either gone in and like taken a scenario like I just mentioned and matured it, or have you taken somebody who's completely not cloud native and turned them to cloud native? Because I think mentality and attitudes are some of the biggest barriers of entry in my experience anyway.
Yeah. 100%. Eva, I hope you don't mind if I take this. So I have kind of stories on both sides. So I recently worked with a company. They were, arguably they were on the cloud. I wouldn't say cloud native, because they had basically the Windows server running on EC2, and it was just running completely on the host machine, on the virtualized machine, no containers. And we were supposed to come in and implement a GitOps platform for them. And I was a bit worried because, you know, moving from Windows is already such a hassle. But then also like the whole concept of containerization, and then having an actual GitOps CI/CD practice to introduce all of that at the same time, because I already made that experience before that didn't go super well. So kind of worried about that. But the thing was that the team was so behind that idea, like they wanted the change. They really were screaming out to have that change. They were looking for solutions, and they already had convinced themselves that they wanted to switch to GitOps. So we as consultants didn't even have to do that. And they actually spent, you know, the weekend to port their Windows application to Linux. So we could just start immediately. I think we spun up all 4 environments on EKS with CloudFormation within 2 weeks or so, because they were just so behind that. And there was like everything that we wanted to change and tell them, they just embraced it with open arms because they were so desperate for that change. Whereas the customer I was working with before, also GitOps project, they had, you know, they were huge. They had a contract, so direct support contract with Red Hat. So they were at the source. They had all the resources and money in the world to make things happen, but it was all top down. It was all, you know, the management decided, this is what we're going to do. These are some consultants who will teach you how to do it. Now do it. And that did not work. So it has to come from the bottom as well as from the top. That's kind of the difficult thing here. You have to have the commitment from management, but you also have to address the needs of the base.
I have a similar story there from my previous company. It was an online shop, and a different company had built it for this huge corporation, and it was all Java monolith, very, very difficult, very slow to actually put something out there. Features took 2 months to be deployed. So it was just really horrible. So what the company did was they hired 12 people and told them, make a new thing and do whatever you want. So we scaled up a cloud engineering team, built a whole new front end, build it on the cloud. and it was wonderful. It was such a joy to work on. Everyone was incredibly excited, except for the company that was previously hired to build the old web shop. But eventually we onboarded them to the new technology as well, and it worked out perfectly. Obviously not forever, but at least the scaling part was pretty nice, and everyone had fun building it, so that was cool. We have another comment to Anthony's point. Can you elaborate with an example of microservice onboarding and or operations lifecycle strategy? I think, Anthony, that is to you again.
Can I just make a short suggestion for Anthony to answer that in the chat, because we have like 3 questions in the Q&A.
Oh,
just yes. Trying to be mindful of time.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That would be super helpful.
Thanks, Anthony, by the way.
Yeah, tons of things. Yeah, I mean, we have 3 questions. We have, for a startup in an early stage, would you recommend implementing Kubernetes? If yes, why? Or how can that impact on costs? Maybe, yeah, do you want to touch this briefly?
I think in early stage, you should use whatever you want to use, whatever helps you deliver value as fast as you can. So again, this is an interesting take that I read on Twitter the other day about what is your asset as a technology company. Code is not your asset. Code is cost. Writing code, maintaining code, automating stuff, that's all cost to you. Your actual asset is business capability. And if you look from that view, then I would say, if you are proficient with Kubernetes, if this is easier for you, use that. Impact on cost depends on what you're doing right now. Obviously, there are some advantages to using Kubernetes. There are some disadvantages depending on how big are you thinking? Do you have anything that has to run the entire time or not? It's a bit hard to diagnose that from here right now. I would say whatever works for you. If it's getting too expensive, look for alternatives. Hire a consultancy. Don't run Kubernetes on serverless. I cannot recommend that.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. The CTO at GitHub did a webinar here a couple of months ago, and he said something I really liked. You should basically use Heroku until you really have to deploy to China. So, and I think that's a really clever way of putting it. And it's a little like extreme, but there are a lot of people that you're using Kubernetes because it's cool, and it's probably not a really cool reason. Like, you should only use that if you have the very specific needs, and you need to have low-level access to the configs, basically. My take.
I see that also with people wanting to maintain their own Kubernetes cluster, where I'm like, why?
Why?
I don't think there's like maybe 10% of use cases where you actually need such specific things that you have to really manage your own control plane. I don't think it's really necessary for most of the cases I see. I think the bigger issue is that you can. And this is also, you see with other technologies. So we did have this other question, like what other technologies won't save you? Like blockchain. Blockchain, I think, is a very good example of technology that is super cool technology, really interesting. How many use cases does it actually have where it solves a problem that cannot be solved another way, maybe in a less wasteful manner? I don't think that many. I think most use cases that I see.
Shiny.
Sorry?
It's new and shiny.
Exactly.
It will always happen. The hype train is always going round and round.
And you know what? I used to be a JavaScript engineer, so I totally get that. I totally get the, ooh, there's a new shiny thing. I want to like try it out. I want to play with it. That's great. Play with it, test it out, do a POC, whatever. But when it comes to your business, really think about, does this add to the value or not? And I would unfortunately say most of the time it probably doesn't, because it's, yeah, what we do is kind of also boring. Just have to say it like it is.
That is a daring comment. Jin, that is a really interesting question. How can we make applications portable running on Kubernetes in multi-cloud providers? Excellent question. And Jin, yeah, you raised your hand. Can you? I allow you to talk, and you can ask your question directly. You have to unmute yourself, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. Now I unmute. Okay, so my name is Jin Kim. Thank you for taking my questions. So Kubernetes provides really good runtime environment to build application. So like Lian said, don't create your own or manage your own Kubernetes. So we are using cloud providers, the Kubernetes such as Amazon EKS, Google GKE, and Azure. So the problem is that actually when we're creating application, we need to use their own specific, even though it's a Kubernetes, but it is a dialog of each provider. So we try to find out what is the best way to make the application running on Kubernetes in different multi-cloud providers. Actually, there is any other recommendation, but one way we found that is infrastructure as a code or platform as a code is really great to save our coding and then configuration, but still we need to write a lot of code in that in particular environment. So we try to bring up the next abstraction, which is called the architecture as a service, which provide the built-in integration solution. For example, data flow platform, which can actually handle multiple use case, data ingestion, data replication, data synchronization, can be run on any cloud environment on the Kubernetes. So is there other way we can actually address this kind of problem besides what we're trying to achieve?
Lian and Eva, would you allow me to take that question?
I was just going to say, I don't know if I can answer that.
my favorite my favorite one. So there are so first of all, I mean, to make sure that you set yourself up for multi-cloud, you obviously have to make sure that your configurations are designed in a way that they can actually handle that. So you definitely want to use something like that is YAML based, obviously with configuration as code. You already mentioned that. You want to make sure that you are not applying direct changes through kubectl, because that makes it very, very hard to roll deployments over to different providers. Next, you want to make sure that the environment variables that are provider specific, if you want, are parameterized in order to make sure you can swap them and inject the right ones depending on the context of your provider. And then there are a whole bunch of new tools, a new tooling category to manage exactly that on Kubernetes primarily. And those are called internal developer platforms. I have a little bit of a vendor bias here, but you can Google them. There are also lots of other tools. And what they're doing is that they are helping you on the one hand, specify the target host, let's say GKE, EKS, or whatever, and establish a connection to these targets. And then depending on where the developers deploy to, let's say an environment to GKE, they inject the infrastructure or resource specific elements into the container configurations at deployment time. So if you have something that depends on a GKE, it will make sure that it injects those specific elements into the configurations and then deploy the system to GKE, for instance. And it helps you create specific manifests. It has a way of creating specific manifests against baseline templates, save them to your repository, and those manifests are then already prepared to run with GKE. So you can Google, I can send that over in the post email. There is a community page called internaldeveloperplatform.org that comes with all of the specific information on this on this tooling category. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, so thanks for your insight tips, and that I was looking for the reference open source projects. Thank you.
Amazing. All right, we have a couple of more questions. Based on industry need, what could be security challenges in Kubernetes in the future? And please, over to you.
Okay, Eva, if you want to jump in at any time, please feel free.
I just will. You go.
Security challenges for Kubernetes in the future. What would you classify as security challenges? Just the general challenges, security challenges that we have in Kubernetes, like role-based access management, or is it more that all the companies are now adopting Kubernetes, and that is a security challenge. I think the biggest security challenge is probably when, as an engineer, as a developer, you don't understand really how Kubernetes does things, how the containers actually run. So I'm doing the CKS now, and now I'm learning so much about, like kernel sharing and OPA and all those things that when I was a developer, I didn't even think about. But then I was pushed into this DevOps role, which was at that time, just build some YAMLs, which obviously there's much more behind that. So I'm seeing, like, again, that split between what is expected of you and what you actually can do. So DevOps, I know that a lot of people have said it's an anti-pattern because it just puts all the problems on one person instead of actually solving the split between dev and ops in responsibilities. So I think it's really that I see as the biggest security issue, I guess, because I've seen that with especially with clients so many times that people will put anything in their manifests just to make it work. It's not malicious in any way. It's just that, oh, I put this number in and now it works. And they don't understand why. And then they don't get the support and enablement they need from the platform team because they only do the platform. So again, this is from team topologies where they say you have 3 types of teams. You have the stream aligned team, that's the feature team, the product team, the one that actually directly contributes to business value. You have the platform team that provides like the service, but then there's still like an enabling factor that's missing where you try and empower the users to be able to properly use your platform. And that could be by adding a separate layer of abstraction, just like Jin just said, or like Humanitech is doing, or you have a team that teaches people how to do Kubernetes. Yeah, I think Casper wanted to jump in with something.
No, I just posted one more webinar that you can see the recording of around holds in Kubernetes. I totally agree with you. The problem is really the human factor here, like your hard coding secrets. And I just had a case with a client who had another hour of production outage because someone hard coded something between environments, and I totally agree. There are a couple of things that you can screw up, especially around the use of Istio. But the Thomas Fricker, who gave that webinar, is a great expert on that. You should definitely check that out as well. We have more questions. Would you recommend Kubernetes for a product where we support as a software as a service ourselves, and also where we have to deploy in a customer's on-premise data center?
Again, I feel like it's kind of hard to diagnose that from here. But generally, if the customer's on-premise data center runs Kubernetes, why not? I mean, the nice thing about Kubernetes is that everything you have on there is in theory very easily portable. I know that it's not really, but the idea behind this is that you can easily put your container in somewhere else. So again, if that makes sense for you, if you can deliver value faster in that way, why not? Yeah, kind of difficult to say without more context here. But I also, if you want to give me more context and ask for more details, I would probably have to bill you. So feel free to reach out to me and I'll send you the bill.
But I think so my experience, it's a huge pain in the ass. First of all, I would try to really not deploy to a on-premise data center. Tell your management they should double the deal size for these things, because it is super painful. And I'm always telling clients, make sure that the cluster you are actually sending stuff to at the client's on-prem is Kubernetes specific, is Kubernetes itself. And what makes it even, that is still a problem because your QA will then need to test that shit, right? Very difficult. So the best thing you can do is to say, okay, I'm developing on, I'm shipping a version that is compatible with EKS, GKE, maybe OpenShift and AKS, whatever. And we make sure that the receiving stuff on the customer side is also one of these. right? So then you can test actually against your GKE. So we have that case as well. You can actually test the production version on GKE and send to the customer's GKE. If you're really dope, you manage to do a VPC into the customer's cluster, so you only get access to deploy there. That makes it even more simple. So my take: never offer things where you deploy something on premise that is a different orchestrator underneath. You will drown in QA.
That's a very good point. I know that there's also tools that kind of try to simulate a remote cluster and your local cluster to make it feel like one cluster, where you kind of also address this discrepancy.
Yeah, we have one more question, and we're slowly running out of time. What are your takes on running stateful applications with Kubernetes? Would you recommend running a DB in Kubernetes? Over to you.
Hey, Jitendra. So happy to see that this question is coming from you, because obviously, as a CDK fan person, you would like to learn more about Kubernetes. That's very nice. Sure, running stateful applications with Kubernetes. So I would probably not recommend running a database in Kubernetes. Again, you can if you want to. If you're a one-person outfit and you need to get something up and running somehow, do it. But if you are on a cloud provider, obviously use one of their offerings if you can. If you're running your own thing, I would still probably not do it, because this entire thing about the lifecycle that is managed away from you is kind of, I don't know. It just seems like it's a massive trade-off that I don't know what if the value you get from that would actually make up for the hassle that it would take you. But I have to honestly say, I have not ever tried to run a database in Kubernetes myself, so I actually don't know if there's any like great advantages to that. Eva, Casper, do you know anything more about that?
I don't see much advantages. So I've had the pleasure of trying this. I also not see that at any clients. So I see a lot. I mean, there are cases, but if you are in serious production setups, I don't think it's a particularly great idea. Chances you screw this up and you don't get the backup set up right, and all of these different things, I don't some things that we might have setups that enable that to do on Kubernetes in the future. I don't even see that coming. I don't think Kubernetes is the right thing for that. I think you're spot on, Lian. Use managed offerings. It doesn't make sense to try to save money there. Also, you don't really save money because operating Kubernetes isn't super cheap either.
Yeah, exactly. Although it scales nicely. So yeah, I had this customer that they wanted to run a single Kubernetes cluster for every one of their services because they were so afraid of a cluster breaking. And then, oh no, I can't talk to my services anymore. And we had to go through this entire, no, wait, on Kubernetes, this is how you actually now do things. It's not like old servers, because they wanted to manage each container individually on AWS in its own kind of resource group. And it's like, no, that's not, you have to completely change the way that you think about your resources, because basically the Kubernetes resources, they're not, like, don't think about them as individual resources you have to manage. So you can't just, and this is the whole thing about cloud native, why it's not just lift and shift. It's like a whole completely different way of managing resources or having resources managed. And there's another way to think about them and how you use them. So I think it's always very valuable to put some extra time and effort into really skilling up your people. If you're doing any kind of transformation using a technology like Kubernetes, where it touches so many aspects of not just the developers directly, but maybe even like how you design software. I don't know, this is a big claim, I know, but it just touches a lot of areas in your process, in your delivery and value creating process, that I think it's just useful for everyone to kind of understand this is how we're thinking about software now.
Yeah, I think it's so important that if you're doing these transformational shifts, the management is ready to take some money and invest in skilling up people. Otherwise, you're just like boosting cognitive load. Nobody wins. There is no positive net effect on the top line. There's my favorite number that I like to tell everyone, where the management says, "Oh, we're not able to invest in these things." The top 5, like the top quartile of teams with the highest developer velocity show the largest top level growth, and so net revenue growth. And you can find a direct correlation. 5 times higher, the more developer velocity, the more revenue growth. Those numbers are so crisp, they're so clear. If a company is not investing in their developers and the health of their developers and the skill level of their developers after COVID in particular, right, like those businesses will go down. So I think, yay, great time to be alive as a developer.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, human resources, developers costs, the developers are still the most expensive resource in any company. So they should just use them. Don't just like put them in there and like, oh, hire more. So yeah.
And have your engineering managers take care of them.
Oh yeah, so this is something that's very interesting to us also as engineering managers, that to us, it's really about helping our people kind of achieve their goals as well. So it's not just about, you know, the company goals, but also where do you want to go, and see how we can align that. And that makes people much more productive because they have something at stake for themselves also, without us having to force anyone to do anything.
Exactly. It's very nice.
By the way, there's a question from Laura. What are your opinions of VMware Tanzu? I don't have any opinions on VMware Tanzu. It serves its purpose. It's probably also not going to save you, though, is my guess.
I don't think anything will save you at this point.
And you yourself can save you. But it's also because this is also what I say when I come to clients. And then a lot of times clients, when we come there and they already know that things are kind of messy, they will say to us, we probably have not seen anything as bad as this, like, oh, everything's so horrible. And I always tell them after our assessment, like, you already have the best solution for your situation, given what you have, what you're working with, and the circumstances that you have. Like, if there was a better solution, you would have already found it, because you're the experts on working with the technology at the place where you are. What we can do is kind of change the environment, maybe change some individual things, so you can solve a different problem. But that exact problem, the way that you solve it, is probably the best way to solve it. And that's kind of where the thinking needs to change.
Excellent wrap up, I think. I'm mindful of time here. Thank you very much, Eva and Lian, for this informative session. Michael and Laura, for your remaining questions, we can maybe get back to you on email, via email. I'll try to do that. Interesting question here around zoning and whether simple namespaces are enough. My feeling is for now that should be enough, also much cheaper. But anyway, thank you for this, for engaging. Thank you for visiting this meetup. We are going to send an email afterwards with all of the things that we touched and a lot of other materials. Lian and Eva, please feel free to send me more materials that you think the audience would be interested in. Again, everyone, thank you for joining from all around the world, and stay with us in the next weeks. We're going to have a lot of very interesting sessions on this meetup happening as well. I think Thomas Fricke is coming back with another one on Kubernetes security as well. So make sure you check out the meetup pages. All right, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening and take care, and don't infect yourself with Delta.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.